Yep.
Right, we are live. Hey everyone, welcome to the Final Click Marketing Show. I'm Ronnie Soud.
I'm Casey Main.
And today we have a great show for you, talking about one of my favorite things to do with clients, and that is laying down and creating a marketing process, which I believe is so vital for continued growth. And Casey is a great person to have on this show because, one, she helps us out here hands-on with our own process day to day. And then two, she has, I wouldn't say a side hustle, but you have a marketing podcast that you're growing.
Yes, it's not a marketing podcast.
I mean,
it is a podcast, but yes, that I am growing, and I know that I should have a process. I value process and people that are very organized like you are, but it doesn't come natural to me, and so I tend to get overwhelmed, and then I'm not doing what I should be doing. So I'm excited for this conversation.
So in this episode, we're going to be dead honest. I think a lot of you know, I was an agency owner of another agency up in Chicago in a previous life. And so when that ended, I restarted Soud Marketing here in North Florida about 3 years ago. And so, I didn't quite know what it was going to be. And I'm teeing that up because we're really just getting started on our marketing journey. Right. So we launched as an agency, we got clients, we were really busy. And so, at this point in our life, we are just starting to lay the process down. But this is something that I do for clients on the regular. And it's one of my most favorite things to do because this is what I think helps them become consistent and really scale growth. So today we are going to kind of take it in 3 stages. Which is getting started, right? So the process and idea phase of how to get started, how to begin thinking about marketing your business, and then the actual act of creating content, what's the process around that, and then the process for evaluating the initiatives that you put into practice. All right, so let's start with getting started.
Okay.
And this is where I feel a lot of our listeners are. The businesses might have done some digital marketing in the past, but I think having a process today is very important because, as you know, it's very hard to have a single message in today's marketing world, right? You yourself with your podcast, you have continual episodes.
Yes. And I think it's a valuable way to look at it because, all right, so when social media first happened, it was all just personal. You're just kind of posting your personal life. So it was all like when I have something going on or when I think about it, I'll post. And then if you're using social media for a business perspective with the intention to, grow your followers, grow your engagement, get qualified leads, all of that, you have to approach it in a much more organized fashion because now all of a sudden you've got to play with the social media algorithms. So you need that consistency. And then it even gets into the overall branding of consistency of messaging. And it's just, I think that's what I've struggled with is viewing social media through a different lens than how I've always used it personally. And now being like, okay, now I want to use it from a business perspective.
Right. I think social media is a good place to start because for a few reasons. One, I think it causes overwhelm. And then I think the overwhelm thus causes analysis paralysis, and then you don't do anything. When, in my opinion, the way to approach it is to first start with what do we need out of marketing? So forget social media and channels and, all that other, intimidating stuff. But first, what do we need out of marketing, right? And clearly define that. And I would, define it as what the business needs, what type of customers you need, and what message you're going to send out to prospect, really, which is to go and hunt for new individuals. And so I don't think that is instilled with enough emphasis when people get started with digital marketing. I think they just start and they spray all these messages everywhere. And then what happens is they don't have a methodical process with which they're rolling content out, with which they're rolling messaging out. And then that also leads into they don't have an evaluation process to know what properly works and what doesn't. They just instead of having they have a bunch of noodles thrown to a wall and then they all start falling down.
Yeah. So I have a question actually. So just in terms of how we view or use social media. So I tend to view it myself, and maybe this is just the excuse I give myself to not really put this process in place, that it's like you can use social media in one of two ways. One, as a growth tool, growth and prospecting tool, and another as just a profile, like an element of your online profile. So if somebody goes to, say, your Instagram page, they're seeing something that looks professional and has your messaging there. Is there in itself needs a process of consistency and brand consistency and all of that. But am I shooting myself in the foot by viewing social media like that? Like it's just an element of your online presence and not necessarily using it in a really go after new people kind of way?
Yes. So I mean, the thing, one, social media gets a lot of attention, and rightly so, because in my opinion, it is the greatest discovery and prospecting tool that we have today, because we can not only go after individuals who are interested in what we offer, but we can also go after them by their behavioral actions that they consistently take online, right? Which is a powerful thing. And that's where the whole ads platform, comes into play. But that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. One, I think every business has a message that they need to get out to new individuals. It's like, what would you tell someone about you when you first sit down on a first date, right? That's what, you don't get married right away, right? You kind of date along the way. And I think that's very important, because today the customer journey is fragmented, right? We're all everywhere. We're all researching in different places, especially depending upon what we're going to buy and what we're researching to buy. And so you as a business, I think, need to instill a messaging strategy and a process for getting that message out, right? What do you want them to know first? What do you want them to know second, right? What do you want them to know about working or using you? What's your customer service like? What are they going to experience? And all of that, I say that you need a process in this part, because one, you need to think of, who do you want? What do they care about? So what do you need to tell them when you go to first prospect them? And then what's your follow-up strategy? And then what channels are you using in order to continually communicate and talk with them?
So, and that's something you've mentioned before about that kind of that consistent message and that order of messaging. And that's something where I've just been viewing it all wrong. So I think I've told you this before. I have this weird aversion to, I don't want to tell people things they already know. So I incorrectly assume people know things. And I think I need to constantly be coming up with new messaging to put out there. But really, it's not so much about always think of something new to say. It's more be strategic in what you say, so that people are seeing that messaging in the right order. I have not been doing that.
So give me an example of something that you think people already know that you don't need to talk about.
Like that my podcast is about better understanding your relationship with self, because that's, what I say in every episode, and it's in the little tagline of Instagram, but I'm not consistently posting anything about that. I'm only posting new episode stuff,
Gotcha.
The topic of each episode, but I'm not hammering home the main message of why people should listen to the podcast in general. I'm really only going episode specific.
Gotcha. No, I think that you need to have a central theme, right? And so I think you should be hammering home that central theme every time you broadcast live, or every time you put out a piece of content, because that's what people initially grab onto. It's that Casey or this business has this central theme that I'm into. And then off of that, you kind of have all these sub themes. Right. And so in the business world, this works exactly the same way, right? And the reason that that's important is because the internet is not a mass medium, right? It's a collection of micro mediums. And so today we get to pick and choose. Before, you used to not be able to pick and choose what was on TV. You either tuned in or you didn't. Today we get to pick and choose. And so the demand for the content is the power rests with the consumer, right? So whoever's watching and listening, and in doing so, you need to cultivate an audience based on what you consistently offer.
Okay, so kind of step one is figure out that central theme and and I guess then the order of messaging.
Right.
That's what I need to do this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend. Great. Do Monday. Yeah. And so, I think that's very important to do, in a process style, because it sets the tone for everything else, Okay. And I do not think enough initial attention is paid to the setup process of what are we going to put out there. I don't think a lot of people have a process for creating that, but you should. And the process for that, I don't think needs to be anything stringent, but I do think what you should be doing is pulling the right people from your organization into the room, okay, and getting their ideas on how we should be presenting to cold prospects, and then how we should be nurturing them too along the way until they become paying customers, right? Okay. And that could be various different people within your organization. It should not just be your agency. It should also be, the head of your customer service team, the head of your support team, so on and so forth, as well as the advertising and marketing individuals, either in-house or in an agency that help you out. Okay. And so then this messaging is done just everywhere digitally. I'm thinking just in social media, but then I realized, okay, but then there's also the email, like having an email sequence, which I don't currently have, but that's high on my to-do list. But that, okay. It should be on your website, of course. Website. Right. So, a lot of people today, are still very, very much blogging, which it's still relevant. And is a great tool to utilize, for outbound communication up on social. But, it should essentially be everywhere, because we have to go and hunt and find where our targeted individuals really are. You do not want to do this based on assumption. Just because Instagram's hot and has been for the last 3 years, don't assume that your target market is on there. For instance, I get way more communication up on Facebook than I do up on Instagram. And LinkedIn has always sort of historically, for I would say 10 years, been a great channel for me. And so, you need a process, because you don't want things to go based on assumption. Right. Okay. So that brings up a good point, though, because as you talk about LinkedIn, I'm like, I don't really do anything on LinkedIn, because I'm assuming that's not where my people are, but that could be an incorrect assumption. So we have to figure out the messaging, but then how do we determine what channels, like how do we prioritize the channels? Because I think that's one of the reasons it gets so overwhelming, because it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many. And then each one has its nuances of how you should communicate. And then you just start to think of, it's going to take me forever to create all this stuff and have it consistent. So how do we prioritize all the different channels? Well, that's a great question. And the honest answer is that there's no set answer. You have, yeah, right. So you have to go and test. And that's part of what having a process is you need a testing process, right? You need to say, we're going to put this message out there in this way on these channels. And, we're not just going to axe it if it immediately doesn't work, because there's a lot of reasons that it might not work. You might need to tweak that initial idea some. And that's why we call it a process, right? Is because we're not just going to, do things off of snap judgment. We want to make sure that we've given each idea enough time to sort of develop. And in doing so, each idea, each channel, enough time to develop. And in doing so, you can then go through and evaluate, do I need all of them? Do I need some? Do I need to just saturate one? And then also, which message worked best for us over the long run? right? So not just something that got you a lot of likes or shares. Those are vanity metrics. You need, a process again, so that you can create content that will continually get the engagement of people in your target market and move them to the next stage of your funnel.
Okay. Even then evaluating all that, even that then starts to feel overwhelming to me. And I think it's because, and we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, depending on who you are in the business that's managing this, like I'm I guess I'm the creative. And so that's just kind of not how my brain works.
Right.
Or it's not, I value it, but I don't necessarily want to do it because I feel like it's going to be time consuming. But I also recognize if I just sat down and put a process in place, I can follow a process. It's developing the process, I guess, is where I get like, I don't want to do it.
Right. So everywhere that I've ever been, I think installing a process with my clients has been the number one thing that everyone has appreciated most. Right. In my opinion, process creates growth, and growth then creates sales, and so on and so forth. And so the owner or the decision maker of that particular company or business is not only appreciative, but it's also the employees that work within that business appreciate having a process and consistent messaging. And so the process really goes towards, if you're doing it right, your outbound messaging should go to help multiple facets of the business, not just sales.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so if you're not good at creating processes and, step by step and, really organizing a team to all row the boat in the same direction, that's what the first step of creating a process is all about, is how do I get all of these moving parts moving in the same direction? Because that's how you're most powerful. If you're not good at that, then find someone who is. Outsource it, like me. Like that's not a plug, but so like I'm not the best at idea creation, and I'm horrible at creative imagery and branding and that sort of stuff. That's not my strong suit. My strong suit is numbers and I would say organizing a team and who's going to do what, and identifying what the outcome should be. So if you're not good at it, go and find someone who is.
Well, and I think that even brings up a good point of that this way of looking at marketing is even different than I think historically a lot of us have looked at marketing. We really tend to just look at the creative element. But now with the internet and social media, there are like the tracking is out of control. The testing abilities you talk about a lot are really incredible. So now all of a sudden there's this numbers, data, science component to it to really test down to like, okay, who's clicking when is that person dropping off? And that's where marketing then has started to attract more of you process numbers, data people. Right. Which is like two different buckets of marketing. There's the creative, which yes is important, but then there's also this really data component, which us creative people are like, meh, but it's necessary, especially now, because if you're not doing it with how crowded the internet is, then you're not being seen. Right. And that's a good reason to need a process is because you need to bring those two teams together and they need to be working as one. And so, a lot of times there can be ego and pride in one camp versus the other. And so having a process that, okay, we will take your ideas and we will, distribute them like this and we will evaluate. It takes the ego out of it, right? And it's better for the business because it gives you tangible stats that you can grow with, right? It's really hard to grow based on assumption. And a lot of people are still doing that today. They're putting out the same type of content. They have no idea if it's working or not, but they keep doing it for God knows what reason. Or they're only looking at what you call like the vanity metrics, which is 100% what I do. It's like, okay, how many likes have I gotten or comments, which seems like it's important, but what I should be going in and looking at, like who then I guess is, so like on Instagram, for example, you can look at, I know the insights and see how many profile visits have you gotten or clicks to your website. Like that's the more meaningful stuff, not whether or not they double tapped and like
Right.
the post. It's, are they moving through the messaging process?
Exactly. And so that kind of, I think bleeds into the other two parts of creating a great marketing process, which is the content development and the evaluation, right? And so, moving away from vanity metrics and, two, I think finding the format to let your business's tone and voice come out is part of the process too. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with and they hide behind it. It used to be, I don't think you had to have a process as much because you used to be able to put a single message out into the world, spread over the few mass mediums like newspaper, magazine, and radio and TV, and it could all be the same. And because it wasn't that crowded, it worked. Today, that's not the case. Today, you need a process because you have to continually find what works. And two, people are evolving faster with you. And so they're evolving as consumers faster than we've ever seen. They didn't used to evolve this fast. And so your messaging and your business needs to mature along with how all of us mature online as smarter and smarter consumers.
So that's a really good point. Like before this whole internet craziness and social media, it was, I imagine a company came up with a great commercial and a great print ad, and that ran on the TV spot and in the magazines, and like that was it. And all you really knew, I guess, is did you see a spike in sales?
Right.
Which now
it was a bottom line thing.
Yeah, there's so many different channels, and then you can test all these different types of content on each channel. Like, did people click? Did they then go to this? And that's what I think is so fascinating, is how all the data ties together that you're able to look at. What do you call that? Omnichannel marketing. Yeah.
Omnichannel. So that's being everywhere, right? Which is what we all want to achieve, right? Because we all want our business present everywhere whenever people in our target market, go online or open up watch TV or listen to the radio or, YouTube, what have you. And so that is the end goal. And there is a process in order to get there. And so, I think this kind of bridges us into, you've gotten started, you might have some ideas. Now, how do you put those ideas into action? And that's kind of where creating content today needs a process and becomes so vital, right? And this is where a lot of people, I would say a lot of people fly through the first step, right? And think that they have an idea of what they need to do, right? And then where they get stuck is in the perpetual creation of content, because it does need to be something perpetual. And that's why you have to have a process with how you create content. And the first way of doing that, again, I think is brainstorming with your team and making sure that you're creating the right type of content, that you have enough variety to test to see what your audience is really into, and that you also have a follow-up strategy for them.
So so if we're going to test this, how many different types of, are we creating different types of content per channel to then look at, okay, which one's working better? Like, how much content are we producing?
Well, I think that depends. I mean, for us personally, we're at 2 short videos a week, and then we do our 1 long show. And the reason that we arrived at that is because it fits the personality of our business, and it's something that I can consistently execute. And I think that that's how you have to think about it when you want to lay a process down, right? What I think is very helpful, especially with content marketing, is if you open up an Excel sheet and you create a calendar, right? And you start putting ideas down, and then you can begin organizing those ideas. And then you can also begin formulating in your head, okay, at what rate can I execute these, right? And then you get started, and you might have to tweak it a little bit. But without having that process and looking at it from a 30,000 foot view, all of your messaging might be holed up, over here, when you might need to broaden it out and send more different types of messages out into the world. Also, I think that without looking at it and having a base schedule, it's hard to know what your business and organization can consistently deliver, right? I think some people like us, I can go live like every day, and that's the easiest thing for me to actually do. Other people can't do that. You know, I'm not a great writer. It's easier for me to turn on the camera and start babbling about something in marketing than it is for me to sit down with a blank Word doc, right? So as part of our process, it is us going live in two different formats, really. So we have the short videos, and then we have the long video that we do every Friday at 10. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for watching. But that's what works for our business. And then, you know, that's our content creation. And then on the back end of that, that's when we go and we make all of our social posts, okay, based on the video content that we make. Right. And so that's our process that works for us.
Right. And then also the shorter ones, writing them into blogs. So then we've got the written content, and
and then that lays into our distribution process too, and you know, and everything else. And that's what gives us, our business, an advantage in marketing, you know, against the other agencies here. You know, I wouldn't say it's an advantage, but it's our unique way. Right? Because the other agencies can do things that I can't, and vice versa. But what I'm comfortable with is just, you know, again, flipping the camera on and going live, and you guys getting to know my personality and my marketing thoughts, and then us turning that into actionable content throughout the week. And then that also influences what our distribution strategy is. Okay. But it all starts with making these videos. Right.
So the content development process is kind of a combination of where are your people, like what messaging do you need to get out there, and then what's actually feasible for you as a business to consistently do.
Right. And what I hear from a lot of businesses when we go in is that they've taken advice from someone and they go, oh, so-and-so said it needs to be 3 times a day. And so-and-so said it needs to be every week. And so-and-so said this and that. And honestly, all of that's wrong.
But that's so overwhelming because there's so much out there. There's so much out there saying different things. And so we're never told, hey, find what's feasible for you.
Exactly. And what that means is that how consistently can you put out something of great quality? And you putting out something of great quality should be of utmost importance rather than the frequency with which you're doing it, right? Because if you're going to put out five pieces of junk, you're going to get junk results back.
Well, yeah, and that was a big kind of aha moment I had. I think Dania mentioned in one of the prior shows that, or maybe it was when we were just talking, that like the way like the Instagram algorithm is, like if you post something and I kind of just swipe through it because maybe I am normally interested in your post, but I swipe through because I'm looking for something, that it kind of marks that, and it's like, oh, Casey doesn't care as much about Ronnie's post, so then I'm going to see less of them. So it's like it's so crowded that if you're not, I hear you on the quality over quantity, because you want people stopping and looking at those posts. Otherwise, it's going to hurt your engagement, and from an organic standpoint.
Right. And this stretches beyond social media too, right? If you put out an email newsletter, some people do it every week. Some people do it twice a month. Some people do it once a month. The point is that when you put this stuff out, are people excited that they're seeing it? Right. Yeah. And if it's on social media everywhere, if it's a blog post, if it's email, right, if it's videos up on YouTube, you know, the point is to have a process that you can consistently execute. What you're executing needs to be of quality, and that will always deliver you results. And it honestly, in my opinion, and what I've seen, it does not matter if it's once a month or if it's every day. The quality piece of content is what brings in the results.
Yeah, because people don't want you to waste their time.
Exactly.
I will sign up for email lists and then give it, I don't know, maybe 3 emails. And if I don't find myself actually reading them, then I unsubscribe immediately.
Right. And so, you know, a little bit of insight. So what we tend to do here is we do an hour-long show, which you're watching now. It's on a single topic. the shorter videos that we do tend to be based on the theme of that week's hour-long show. And so that way we have a cohesive message going out every single week. Again, we do 3 videos a week because it's easy for me to do a video than to do something else, right? It's not easy for me to write and for us to do, email marketing and stuff. I'm much more efficient just on camera. And so this is what works for me. So video starts our content development process. And I think you guys need to just find what works for you, right? And after that, don't worry about the frequency quite yet. All of that will start to fall into place. I also tend to find that when you get a good process down, that enables you to increase the frequency later.
Right. Because you're not scrambling like, oh, what am I doing? What am I saying? Okay. Sitting
down that day, opening up your computer to either do a video or write something without having a plan and a process is like death.
Yeah.
So
then you're wasting your own time.
Exactly. And it's going to take you 3 times as long to produce the same piece of content than if you just huddled about it with your team, made a plan and had a process for executing it in the first place.
Okay. So, all right. So then let's go into or I guess how often should we then be evaluating that process? Like what does the evaluation process of the content process look like?
Gotcha. Okay. So the evaluation process is huge and something that I'm really passionate about. I try to tell every business, well, I don't try to tell them. I do tell every business owner, I try to get you guys to do this. So that's what I try to do. But I want every business owner to log in, and we sort of just discussed this before going live, Monday morning. Log in. The first thing you should be doing is viewing the previous week's stats. Okay. Your website stats, your social stats, looking at the messages that you put out there. Doing this is the only way to refine the processes and make them better, or make better content, make better messages, and refine everything that will thus produce growth. Okay. To me, process creates persistence, and persistence creates growth, right? So if you're persistently trying to get better, you will at some point find the right formula that works for your business, makes it stand out, and thus engages the eyeballs that you need to, and they become customers.
Okay.
I've never seen this not work, but it's a framework that works. It's not, here's a 3-tip, thing like that. It's a framework that you have to implement at your organization.
Okay. So every week looking at stats,
every week.
But not every week. Are we changing what we're doing based on those stats? Or because I know it takes a while, you got to give things time. So it's more that weekly check-in to kind of gauge the temperature of things. And then if you're not seeing the results you want, at what point do you start to make changes?
Well, at some point you might want to make changes immediately, right? So when you log in and look at stats today, you're looking at website stats, you're looking at social stats, you're looking at email stats, right? Part of customer service is done on social media today, right? So going and viewing comments and reviews and hearing what people are saying about your business after having experienced it, that type of stuff, I think you can go and put into action almost immediately if there's issues, right? 2, also listen to the positives and take a collection of the positives and start putting those into your marketing and advertising efforts, right? So if there's something that people are consistently saying that maybe you didn't think of as a prospecting message or a piece of content or something that you should be putting within your ads, maybe start adding that in, right? So it's very, spending time on this, and it only takes about an hour every single week, right? To fully evaluate everything, because you're going to start doing this faster and faster, right? As you start, you're going to get good at it with practice. And then in doing so, it's going to allow you to refine things in a faster way.
Right, which makes sense because the internet has just made everything faster. Even from the consumer standpoint. So
that's not always good.
Right, because they have short attention spans, and it's like if I'm looking for what I need, and then when I reach that point of ready to buy, it's going to be kind of I'm making that decision right then and there, and you've maybe lost your shot if I didn't, like some of your messaging.
Exactly. So how do you evaluate if what you're doing is good?
I've just been evaluating it on the Vanity Metrics of just engagement with the posts. I don't go into, this is so bad, I feel bad even admitting this to you. So I don't go into so I don't currently do email. I'm going to, but I'm, right now my podcast website is part of my just CaseyMain.com website. So I'm going to build out its own kind of thing. So then it'll have its own email sequence. So I will do that. I'm not there yet. So right now it's just social media. But this is how bad I am, that I do have a process of creating content weekly to promote the episode of that week. It's mainly focused on Instagram, and then that auto shares to Facebook. I then really just look at engagement on Instagram. I don't even look at engagement on Facebook because I hate going into a Facebook page. And then, but I'm not looking at the insights within that. So I'm not.
Okay. But so let's back up. So one, you said I'm starting email, like, do you feel anxiety that you don't have email yet?
Not really, because I don't know what I would say, and I want to have quality email.
Good.
And I learned this.
That's the right answer.
Yes,
don't just do it to be doing it.
I learned this the hard way because back to, I guess, almost 2 years ago when my book published, and then I started, and I had the website, and so I had email. And so I would do what I started off with, and I was just copying other people, was a weekly email. So like Tim Ferriss does a weekly email. All these people in my space do like a weekly email. And what I found was that was a lot to keep up with. And I was just kind of copying what other people were doing. I didn't think and sit about like, okay, what makes sense for me? And it got to be too much. So it wasn't feasible.
Right.
And so then I dropped it because and I also didn't think people were getting the value of it. And I wasn't getting any value through it.
Right.
So I just know I did it wrong before. And when I do it again, I want to do it right.
Right. And that's what, that's what we should all be striving to achieve. So let me ask you this. Are you somewhat happy with your podcast listeners? Because to me, that would be the metric that I would harp on.
Like the number, how many there are.
Yeah. Do you have consistent listeners?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
And it's growing slowly. The podcast world is tough getting the data analytics because it's just, you can't ever really track listens. You only can see downloads. Right. Just because someone downloaded it doesn't mean they actually listened to it. So it's very hard to really know what's going on. But that number is consistent and consistently growing. So that makes me happy. That's
great. And so, I think that's your square one. And so then you just need to put a process to growing that and finding what you can consistently do. So that's, I think that you're sitting in a fantastic spot. And I wish more businesses did that too, because what you consistently do, what you like doing is the podcast. So everything else will sort of stem off of that. And I think if more businesses thought that way, which is, okay, what do we consistently like doing in terms of marketing and communication? Because let me clue everyone here. If you're not doing anything, you're not alive today. So you have to be doing something in terms of outbound messaging, marketing, advertising, so on and so forth. So, like we said, I like going live. Casey likes doing a podcast show. Those are things that work for us. Other channels and other ways of pushing that will come as this process expands.
Right. I think I've gotten into a good flow of putting out quality content on a consistent basis in that one medium, the podcast.
Right.
What then I need a process for is repurposing that content for the other channels and kind of how...
Giving it some legs.
Yes. Yes.
Sure. Exactly. And that's where, when you kind of know this too, when you're ready for growth, right? It feels kind of natural. And that's where, you might need, and businesses too, this is where a lot of you then go, okay, I need help, right? Because we've built some kind of an audience based on something that we like to do, on topics that we like to consistently talk about. But now we need to reach more people. And that's sort of your jumping off point. And so then, again, you have to find the style that suits the organization to reach more people. And that's custom, right? No one's putting a gun to anyone's head and saying it has to be on Instagram or it has to be on LinkedIn or wherever,
right?
Or it has to be live. There's a lot of different ways to reach the people that you need. It just needs to be a way that fits your organization best.
Right. And I think that's a really good point. You know when you need help, like when it's time to scale it to a different level that is beyond maybe what you do. And that's kind of the point I've been reaching, is I've gotten into a nice little groove of the podcast and, some bare bones social media, but, I'm not on Pinterest. Like Pinterest is hugely important. And I'm at that point where I'm ready for legs, as you said, and know that I need help to do that.
Right. And that's a good spot to be in too. I think having a process, so when you're where Casey is, I think having a process also helps you to be more cost effective with this. Okay. Because it helps you with consistent growth. And if you try and rush out and do everything all at one time, that's very costly. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. And those are going to be costly mistakes too, because all this stuff in some shape or form costs money to do. Right.
Right. And that's even like kind of what we've been playing around, because once you get into repurposing content or creating different types of content for different channels, then you need some kind of a system to do it. So StreamYard is going live and we use this other thing. And then that gets into all these little monthly memberships. And so I was just thinking the other day, like I pay for Planalloy, which is a social media scheduler, but I'm only going on Facebook and Instagram, which I could just do through Creator Space. So I'm paying that monthly fee for no reason. And so it's just been very eye-opening to me recently. Like there's a lot of tools out there to help with this, but a lot of them do have a fee. So you've got to, once you figure out your best process, then you can figure out your toolbox as well.
Right, exactly. And the tools are all there. They're so niche today, right? There's no one tool that's right for every organization. And so that's where, consultants like us, we can certainly help you with that. If y'all have questions about tools, leave it in the comments below. We're happy to throw out our best suggestions based on what your particular needs are. But tools today are so niche, right? And, I feel like everyone tends to gravitate to a couple of the top ones because they're just the most popularly spoken about. But that is part of the process is evaluating tools that will help you create systems for growth. Right. And I mean, us here, we're constantly trying new stuff out, cutting it, keeping it, redoing our marketing budget here. One thing that I pride ourselves on with our clients is I hands-on test almost everything myself. And that gives me a great level of knowledge. So when I go into a consulting or a training session with a client, chances are I personally use that tool. I haven't just, read a review on it. And I can tell them, no, it's great or it's no good. They overbill themselves, whatever. And I can help whittle that part of the discussion and the process down.
Yeah. Well, and that's just, I think I had another little aha moment of how things have changed, that it used to be, you create an ad and it lives in a magazine and it's in that magazine forever. So if you're not happy with what you created, that content is there out in the world forever. Whereas now you have so much more flexibility to play and test with things because you can delete, you can take things down. Like nothing lives they say it lives forever on the internet, but not necessarily visibly to other people.
Our attention doesn't live forever.
Right. People's attention
is what they mean. Yeah. Yeah. And so, that's true. Like we've had great ideas that I thought were just going to kill it the first time around that they were so flat. And then we had to repurpose them in order to make them popular. Right. And so, that's part of our process here, is in the evaluation of it, is like, okay, did this idea really not work? Or did it not work in its format? Do we need to repurpose it to try and make it more successful?
Right.
And that's all part of, looking at the stats, having a plan, rolling it out consistently, so on and so forth, all part of having a full scope marketing process that is so vital.
Which is why people need to be Monday morning
stats viewing. Yeah, it's going to be a movement. You heard it here first.
Marketing Monday.
Right. And so, leave a comment below if you would like us to lay down the reports that you should be looking at to evaluate your marketing. We love talking about this stuff. I love sharing that information. And, two, I love helping make your business smarter together, right? So doing this as a team effort and growing it as a team too. So if you're interested, we offer free consultations to do so. I would love to talk with you and learn about what your process is, or help you guys put one in place for growth. So anything else?
I don't think so.
Me either.
I'm inspired. I'm going to put some process in place this weekend.
Okay, good. Remember, process creates persistence. Persistence creates growth. You guys will get smarter if you implement this. I promise you, your marketing will get better and your sales will grow. So thank you guys for watching. This is the Final Click Marketing Show. We will be back next Friday at 10 a.m. again with another great video for y'all. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.